Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to Read Becca for my weekly chatty catch up on everything I've read, everything that I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading, as well as some general chit chat. And I had a very fortuitous week in reading this week. I don't think it was a huge page count or anything, but some big finishes. I would say a lot cleared from my reading plate and freeing me up to move along to a lot of goals I have that have been lingering. So the first big thing that I can't talk too much about, but I'm very excited for, is that for the purposes of these check-ins, I am done with Book 2 Prize. I did not read all 6 of these books this week. I finished the last 2, and realistically, at the time of recording this, I have about 50 pages left of Enter Ghost. But that means I will be finished today with my Book 2 Prize reading, so I'm not going to check back in on this again. You will get a video about my rankings and what I thought of them once the Book 2 Prize has been announced on October 4th, or the winner. It was interesting reading the fiction because I was able to keep up reading quite a bit alongside. So the first of the things that I was able to finish separately and can talk about was on audio. And that book was What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher. It's the second in the Alex Easton series following What Moves the Dead. And I very much enjoyed this. I always enjoy T. Kingfisher. I have yet to have a single dead from her, I think. I think the lowest I've ever had was like a 3 to 3.5 star. So this was very different in tone, though, from the first book. What Moves the Dead is an adaptation or an expansion of the Fall of the House of Usher story by Edgar Allan Poe. And the intent was very much that she had so many questions, she wanted to flesh that story out and answer the questions that it leaves you with because it is so short. And so she adopted a very Poe-esque voice for that book. And I feel we got much more of a T. Kingfisher voice in this one. So if you're used to her other writing, I think this will ring more toward that than What Moves the Dead. The character still feels the same and has a lot of the same beats, but I think we definitely leaned into her sense of very quirky characterization even more, and that's pretty typical of T. Kingfisher. In this story, we have Alex, who is a retired soldier dealing with some PTSD, and they have just been through the first novella in the series, and are going home to, I don't recall if we actually get where specifically this is located, but somewhere Eastern European, very dark and dank type of place. And you just have a general sense of the vibe and atmosphere strongly throughout. So I think that was a strength of this work. We also get Miss Potter. She returns very significantly in this book, visiting Alex Easton. And she was sort of a botanist, artist, who really enjoyed doing depictions of the fungi in the first book. Fungi are present here, but are not a major element. So if you really don't like fungal horror, this will probably be an improvement. And I would say this had all of the atmospheric horror elements, certainly, that I was expecting it to, without being terribly graphic. The first book was kind of right on my line. There was some gruesome stuff there, but it wasn't too overly graphic or focused on that. This one, even less so. There was very little graphic or violent content whatsoever. So it was mostly about atmosphere and eerie. More or less, Alex returns home and there's been kind of some mysterious deaths. There's a lot of rumors about ancient folklore that has been around this area. Oddly, I felt throughout this that Alex was depicted as not really being familiar with norms in the area or a lot of the history of the area. And that seemed strange to me. But I kind of totally bought into it anyway. I didn't really care because I just love T. Kingfisher's storytelling and characterization. I did really enjoy everything. Still felt in-world consistent with previous. We get a lot more about Easton's past and gender identity because that was kind of a major element. Because in this world, the soldiers, people who have a service role, it seems, have unique forms of gender identity and pronouns. And so that was fleshed out even more. And also, we have some significant interactions with a priest, and the priests also have their own form of pronouns uniquely. And that was really interesting. So I feel like it pulled in these great folkloric elements that very much rang true, that built a sense of atmosphere, along with characterization and world building that were building on what we had before and improving from where the first story was. And so I just very much enjoyed this. It was spooky and eerie and a great time. Then I read a fun, light, easy book that I very much enjoyed and have not seen anybody talk about. This is Lavash at First Sight by Taleen Voskuni. And as you can see, this is a sapphic novel. I would not quite call this a romance. This is probably more in the rom-com area because it's much more, in terms of the volume of romance in the book, it's not the majority at all. It's maybe a third of the story. We are way more focused on the fact that our two main characters, we only get one perspective character, and that's Nazali, or Ellie, who is a high-powered marketing associate who's on the director track at this big tech company, and she's very overworked and runs into some conflict in a major project that she's working on. Going into the weekend, she thinks she has lined everything up to be really fine, and her subordinates are going to take care of everything that she's got set up so that she can go with her parents to a packaged food convention in Chicago and help them out, because they run a fine Armenian food supplier. And I think I loved all of that and was actually totally okay with it being more rom-com because the family and food and the competitions at this convention were so compelling. So fairly quickly, I mean, it did take a little bit to fully flesh out the initial parts of the romance, really. But the seeds of it are that when she gets there, she has a run-in with someone, and it's a positive run-in, not a negative run-in, which is a nice start. But then both of them, having no clue, discover that their parents are Armenian food rivals, basically. So both of them have that Armenian cultural history. They're both from the Bay Area, and so they're competing in the same food market, basically. And their parents have this rivalry, but they don't really care. However, their parents do care very much that they not fraternize with the enemy effectively. So it starts off very bland, almost, with that. And for a book that was so compelling, I felt like it did take too long to get that hook in. And really the hook in is that after they discover this rivalry, Nazali's parents have never participated in the big competition that happens at this convention. They usually just are there as kind of purveyors, vendors, more or less, and just showing their wares. But there's also a background competition that the winner gets a chance to display their stuff in a Super Bowl commercial. And they think that's for bigger competitors, but when they find out the rival family always do it and are like, oh, why would you not take a chance at this at least? Because you can only benefit if you potentially win, right? And so of course they participate. So this turns into a massive litany of food competitions. And that is what I loved so much about this. I think this would be really great to turn into an adaptation, either a show or a movie, probably best a movie to keep it to the convention. But of course there are major conflicts and blow-ups between the families. There is this budding romance between these two women who have just hit it off so well immediately and are kind of having to sneak around to hide that they actually don't care about their parents' rivalry at all. And of course the love of food just runs through all the competitions, and that always shines through, I think. One of the things I absolutely loved was getting behind Vanya, the love interest, having this sort of bookish dream. And even though this is fiction, I found myself being like, oh, I want that to exist in the world. So it pulled me in. I really supported the characters and their relationship. I wanted everybody to win the competition. I was just cheering along the whole way. It was so great. I think main quibbles are, there are some romance tropes that I just always don't get along with, and this had those, but they made a lot of sense given the situation that we're in. So I feel like it was not shoehorned in to have tropes that built conflict really between the two, because that was very natural for the situation they were in. So overall, really great read. I am so pleased I picked this up. Absolutely delighted to have, sapphic Armenian food romance at my fingertips. That is stunning. And then the big finish for this week is The Best of World SF Volume 3, edited by Lavie Tidhar. This is something I've been buddy reading with my friend Shannon all year. It is quite a chunky book, and this is a collection of world science fiction short stories. And this has been such a joy. The whole project of this collected works series is to highlight voices mostly outside of the Western world. And I think the first volume was truly a best of. It was highlighting things that were real, like award winners, things that had been very heralded, but it was looking for a wide variety of those as well. Volumes 2 and 3 have been a little more all over the place, and specifically with this volume, I think Tidhar tried to highlight voices you will not have heard of in the Western world, and pick names that haven't really diverged or been published through traditional publishing at all. And so that is great. That has been such a wonderful project in terms of exposure to new voices, different styles and ways of storytelling, and he really has made an effort to diversify and specifically select for difference. And I just love that. I think that this particular volume, volume 3, has been the one that least worked for myself, just because the styles were not quite up to what I like. However, the hits were real hits. We would get, 3 or 4 that were kind of duds just because of the style or the elements not quite working. Cyberpunk almost never works for me, and it's very clear that Tidhar has a lean for cyberpunk. So things like that, very gritty. This one had some more weird and experimental stories in it, and I pretty much appreciated those for what they were doing, regardless of if I liked the story, I think, in all the cases of those. But the hits were such high hits. We had some that were authors I had never heard of before who were writing really philosophical and thought-provoking sci-fi that I would put right up there with Ken Liu or Ted Chiang. Really, really insightful stuff and thought experiments that were very, very exceptional. I think the last story that I read this weekend was one of my favorites, and it was by an author who actually does now have a novel out, Pasi Ilmari Jaskalainen, I can't say that, who wrote the Rabbitback Literary Society, something like that, that's now out. And I definitely want to pick that up because the atmosphere and dread of that story was just so on point. Some others that I really found drew me in and I want to check out their work were Cheop Kim, I think was the #1, very anthropological and introspective sci-fi, very linguistic as well. Catching the K-Beast by Chen Qian is another author. I want to say I know the name, but I'm not sure. I might be mixing up another author from, I think, China. I also think Indra Das was a very strong one in terms of a short story that was in here by another author I know of, and I have a book by Indra Das on my shelf and have not gotten to it, despite the fact that I read the story and thought the writing was really compelling, and I think that the book that I have is going to maybe even be more my sort of thing than the story that was in here. So I'm very much looking forward to getting to that, and I think it will probably be an October selection because it's a little spooky. So yeah, so really put me on to some authors I need to get myself to that I have heard of, a couple, and more authors that I had not heard of that I really, really am interested to try out. So yeah, I love these as a project. They've been fantastic, and myself and Shannon have always enjoyed buddy reading them. So that is everything that I read this week. In terms of what I am reading-ish, this is A Faith of Many Rooms by Debbie Thomas. So this is a short nonfiction that I picked up kind of randomly at the library, and I'm hoping to read today and tomorrow, possibly, for Mid-Month Book Bash, hopefully. But as I'm now finished with my BookTube Prize books, I should have ample time to do that, hopefully. Onward to the watching stuff. So watching has been interesting. I will say I've had a really stressful week, and so I've been back in that space of not doing a lot of narrative. My discussion of that before, where I talked about watching all the kind of dumb British competition shows, including Bargain Hunt, wound up being a goldmine in the comments of you all telling me A, your experiences with Bargain Hunt and reminiscing about it, and B, other shows. So I've been kind of dabbling there. I have not regressed to watching the weird streaming channel shows out of a need to disengage, but I have watched a fair amount of Great British Menu. Again, I'm back on that, but there's so many episodes, so it's great because I can just turn it on and watch a ton of Great British Menu, and it just keeps going. And I also, because of, I think, Genteel Black Hole put me on to the fact that Richard Osman has another show, but I was reminded that I have an absolute load of House of Games to watch that I haven't watched. I started it and just kind of never continued on. And House of Games is a really fun competition quiz show in Britain that is very funny and smart at the same time. And so that one I've been really enjoying, just dabbling in and out of that whenever I want to. And then I also went to see a movie this weekend. So I went to see Deadpool versus Wolverine. I didn't really think that through because I have missed a number of the films, I think, before this, or at least the one like really important one that it leads in from. But I didn't really care. You didn't need to know. It explains everything you need, truly, without having seen every 100 of films in the franchises. But I enjoyed it an absolute ton. I don't know that it was the strongest Deadpool film, but all of the Deadpool films are a great time. Mainly because it doesn't take itself seriously, and it's not trying to do anything specific. It's very like self-aware, and so they can just go all out and do the fun thing in terms of the fight sequences, the music, the dialogue. Like they can always just break all of the rules and go for whatever's going to be the most entertaining and funny. And they do, and I feel like that was a total success. I'm in love with Dogpool. Dogpool was the best. It was just a really, really good time. And it is fairly long, like 2 hours is a long time to sit through a movie, but it did not feel the time at all whatsoever. So it was pretty great. So anyway, onward, life stuff. It's been a pretty boring week. Very, very busy, and I had multiple appointments this weekend, so there's not a lot of exciting stuff. I did get my booster and flu shots, so that's great. It was probably my easiest one so far. I've not had a terrible time with them, but definitely a little bit achy and tired, and that's about it for this one. So very good, very, very good. So if you have not done that, those are available now. I had just a couple appointments. Dusty had surgery this week. So that was exciting and unexpected. We were trying to plan, and then all of a sudden they were able to borrow the equipment needed. He has needed a full dental cleanup, tear out, renovation, which meant he lost a ton of teeth. However, he's needed that. He's a big time drooler because his teeth were so bad. And now we have not had any drool since the surgery. So hopefully that is fixed. And he seems like he's much more restful and doing well with that. So, but it was a tough time. He was so disoriented and so hungry. He's always very hungry, but extra hungry and just yelling about it. And it was terrible. I had to confine him because he was just endangering himself, truly. But he is better now and seems to be recovering very, very well. So I think that's all for me for this week. In recommendations, I have a couple, or I have more than a couple, but I have two main subheadings. One is just an author event that happened this week that, again, I am so sad I missed in person that I could have gone to if I had known it was happening, but it was a discussion with the author John Elizabeth Stintsey, who a number of people have turned me on to as an author I need to read, specifically Lindy of Lindy's Magpie Reads, and I still haven't read from this author, but I need to. So this was a reminder back to put in my back pocket again that I need to pick up one of Stintsey's books. So check out that author event. And then the other is just the general fall recommendations videos have been going out, and I'm very excited about those. And so I think I have 5 that I've bookmarked that I've watched in the past couple of days. So I will link all of those, and I'll put whose they are in the description box down below. So definitely, if you're looking for fall recommendations, try those because there's such a wide interpretation of autumnal vibe. Some are cozy, some are kind of dark atmosphere and gothic. Some are purely about the seasonal, like the actual seasonal depictions where they're occurring during autumn. Many mention food, like cozy warm food as a major element. So definitely check out all of those autumnal book recommendations videos. I think that is all for me today. I hope you're having a wonderful week, and thank you so very much for watching.